and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Dan, he is Mac.
What's up?
And this time, we'll be discussing and reviewing and observing an album, a music album by the artist Rex Orange County titled Pony, which came out in 2019. This was Mac's pick, and so for
Hell yes it was.
And for this podcast, for me, at least, I want to get this out on the front end. I'm less interested in, like, sharing what I think. I'm more interested in...
And why I'm so jazzed.
And why, yes. So, Matt came into the booth, quote unquote, today and just immediately said, I am so jazzed. And so, I want to get into that. Let's start first thing first. Mac, why did you pick Pony by Rex Orange County?
Sure. So, I do love Rex Orange County. Rex Orange County is actually the reason that me and my girlfriend are together.
Wow.
No joke. I mean, not like the reason
we have those artists sometimes.
Yeah. But like because I had one of his earlier singles, like one of his most basic singles, "Loving Is Easy," on my Instagram. Right. And so I reached out like over the internet or whatever, like through the web. And that was her very first impression of me, was not even like what I looked like, but the fact that I loved Rex Orange County. And she was like, oh, he's like indie soft boy. And she got her vibe based off of that. So that's my draw to Rex Orange County as a whole. Pony specifically, is, I was thinking about it on the way over. And I constantly have a changing list of what my favorite album is and whatnot.
Yeah.
I would say Rex Orange County is one of 3 albums that I've listened to that there's not a single song that I don't like.
Interesting. So
only 3 that I can think of.
Were you driven to this pick because a couple of weeks ago we did Interstellar 55, and I was like, how many fives? Which was a movie adaptation of a Daft Punk album, Discovery, which was my favorite album of all time. Did that drive you to this choice, do you think?
I started thinking about it. I will say that I also was just like, man, I want to get some more music back into the mix because I do like whenever we talk about music. Yeah. It does strike up a different type of conversation that I'm not used to. Because I'm so used to talking about theater and film and everything, but it is strange and fun. And also, like, I am very musically invested in terms of just like my day to day, like personally, but I just never really get to stretch that muscle around other people or talk about it. So that was my very first thing, and then also, after having that thought, I was like, okay, so what would I want to share? You know?
Yeah.
And although
because this pick is so you, I just want to get that out there, and we'll go into that more as to why this is so you.
Partially because I kind of look like the guy.
You do kind of now that I'm looking at a side by side.
I've been told several times.
Okay, yeah, wow, that's
whatever.
Okay, well, but as you were saying,
yes, it's I am really into this album. There are a lot of different artists that I could have picked, obviously.
Right.
And honestly, there are a couple artists that I'm more interested in their sound or would like to review it just because they have such a unique style. But this is just like freaking clean, classic, just smart, well-written music. And it's not like he takes the biggest risks in the world or anything.
Right.
He just does it really well. And we even we saw the tour for this album. Me and Emma, me and my girlfriend.
Gotcha.
We went and saw the Pony tour live concert, and it was, I mean, pre-pandemic obviously, and it was fantastic. It really was fantastic. And it made a lot more sense. It definitely felt like it was made by someone with anxiety. And you kind of feel that whenever you're listening to it.
You do, yeah. It's kind of like in there with the lyrics. And I also feel like indie pop as a sort of genre is just like, look, we're here for a good time, but we're also so anxious out of our minds. Like, we're grooving and we're swaying to the music, but holy shit, it's like, is the world ending? God,
we're gonna die. Yeah,
and it's just like, you're driving with your buddies, and you think to yourself, like, man, I'm not going to be friends with these guys in a few years. Like, that, it's this sort of, that is indie pop.
Oh my God. Yeah, that is very indie pop. There is, But also though, this is one of the premier artists and specifically albums of the new genre, the newest genre of popular music, which is bedroom pop.
Go on.
I'm obsessed with it. I think it's very fascinating that it is the next, because you always see like the evolution of music, like early 20th century jazz, things like that, and then you eventually get rock once you get the electric guitar, and like Bob Dylan smashes his acoustic, and like then rock is born, and all this shit, right? But I feel like this is the next step of the evolution of music.
But wait. I mean, we're gonna keep going, but I like the idea of Bob Dylan just smashing his guitar and then rock is born, as if rock wasn't there beforehand.
Okay, yeah, but it's the same thing as like Nora closing the door in the Doll's House.
Sure. Wow. What an
and then realism was born. Obviously there was rock before Bob Dylan, but
I mean, it's always evolving, and then like. Yeah. The sort of grunge rock of the 90s is such its very own thing, and then how does rock evolve from there? And then we get an artist like Linkin Park,
Sure, right.
2000s.
And I think that this is the next big evolution shift, era shift in music, is from the like 2000s pop to 2010s pop to now bedroom pop.
So go on about bedroom pop
to
explain to the people who may or may not include me, what exactly is bedroom pop?
So bedroom pop is basically artists that were found and got their roots in making music without an audience, but from the comfort of their bedroom.
So opposed to like a guitarist just playing at a club like every other night.
Forever in all of music history up until right now, you had to get out and be really good at your instrument for a long time
and
before
you were found,
could be found
physically, yeah.
Right. Yeah, you were found in person.
As opposed, for the most part, now digitally.
Right. But this guy, no joke, he started off making. He didn't even post anything on any like actual music platforms. He only posted on Facebook, and he only posted for his friends. Yeah, it was in 2015.
I mean, 10 years ago it would have been MySpace. Like,
yeah, right, exactly. In 2015, he was just posting for his friends on Facebook.
Great.
And then they were like, "Yo, you need to like after he had like 4 out or whatever." They were like, "You need to make this into a real thing," and he was like, "Oh, okay." And so he spent a lot more time in like remastering and making sure that it was a really high quality sound. He put it into an EP, and then everyone started sharing his EP like crazy.
Right.
And then eventually it came across, or a very important person was listening to it, and that person was Tyler, the Creator.
I see. Okay.
And so Tyler, the Creator, heard his stuff. He was like, "You are fascinating." He immediately flew him out to LA, and he was featured on
I'm on it.
Yeah, it was
just keep going.
Something.
It's something related to Mr. Creator. It might have very well been called
it was
Butterfly, but I'm having trouble finding it because I feel like I'm just under the pressure.
Flower Boy.
Yeah, Flower Boy. There we go.
Yes. So he went out.
The album was Flower Boy.
Yeah, the album was Flower Boy. He recorded 2 songs.
Yeah.
Boredom and Forward. Yeah. Absolutely fantastic songs. He got noticed there, and then he was able to start working his way into the zeitgeist, so to speak. But it was all from the comfort of his own home. He did not perform a live concert until like 2018.
That's insane.
He had like 3 or 4 years of meaty career getting to the top.
Like he's had. I mean, Pony is his 3rd studio album and came out in 2019. I guess in a large audience, he didn't perform there until 2018.
Right.
That's absurd.
Isn't that crazy?
I mean, that's just weird to think, like fundamentally
He had been
speaking.
listened to by millions of people, had already been picked up by an agent,
right?
Had already been featured on a multi-platinum album before he even got up in front of people and sang.
I think that's a great example of
That's bedroom pop.
I mean, yeah, and it speaks to the growth of just like music in general.
Yeah,
It's just,
absolutely. And
you
so,
could be a superstar without
yeah,
just being, walking out of your home.
Right.
Period. You could be a shut-in, and you could be known throughout the world.
the two biggest examples are him and Billy Eyelash. Right?
So when you were saying bedroom pop and like the idea of this artist creating most, if not all, of their music just from their home, the first person that I thought of was Billie Eilish.
Yeah. They were able to make their first.
Who's
EP.
been making music since like she was like 15.
Right.
Absolutely ridiculous.
But at that point, it was just two homeschoolers, two homeschool kids, like fucking around at night, like just in their bedroom.
Phrasing.
Oh, that's. Oh my god, that was the best one-word punchline I've ever heard from you. Phrasing.
I want to get into really fast before we actually get into the meat of this album, which we should do soon. But
everything surrounding it is so interesting.
I want to get to know your first exposure to this album. Where were you? What were you doing? How did you experience this? Because I want to get into really fast that I think how you experience music is nearly as important in terms of like the experience, right?
Yeah.
Of the music itself, right? Like just hearing the songs, and so the aura that's surrounding it and what you're doing surrounding it goes beyond it, or like what you associate with that song. To give a specific example, I'll bring up
please
Interstellar.
Yeah.
55 again, because like I think a lot of those songs from Daft Punk's Discovery, a lot of those songs are significant to me now more so than before, like before I saw the movie, because now I have those images associated with it. So when we discussed it on that episode, but when I hear the song Superheroes, for example, I think of the pilot flying above the crowd, right?
Yeah.
And so then also, like if you think about music from video games, right? And you can think about like, oh, this boss theme and like these 5 other boss themes, they sound pretty generic unless you've played the video game, and then you hear one of those boss themes and you're like, oh, that's when I was facing off against this guy. It was difficult in this manner, but like that was the experience surrounding it. And so after listening to this, I'm really intrigued on the experience that you had surrounding this album. Not only like your first time listening to it, but also just from there, and how do you view this album now? Not just from its music, but as an experience.
I would say that Rex Orange County is one of the few artists that I allow to hit my feels.
Right.
There are very few artists that actually get me to that place. And we'll talk about in a sec why that is that I allow him to get to that place. But I didn't know a crazy amount about him. I didn't know nearly as much as Emma or a couple of friends of mine. But Pony came out, and I think that popped up on my Spotify or something. It was like, hey, like Rex Orange County.
You follow this artist, yeah.
And so I started listening to it, and at that point in my life, I was at 2019. I was at a really, really weird spot. I was the most anxious I'd ever been. A very, very broken person, like really trying to like build from the ground up, like restart, and that's what so much of this album's about.
Yeah.
I mean, so much of it. And so, I mean, definitely stressed out, definitely face to face, definitely it gets better, definitely Pluto Projector, definitely it's not the same anymore. I mean, like that I just named over half the songs. It's
a short album too. It's not hard to name
true,
half the songs.
Right. But so much of it I felt like spoke to me in a specific way, and so and I don't really associate songs or music with moments or like actual tangible memories or pictures. I associate it more with feelings, which is the only thing in my life that I associate with feelings, by the way, because as you know, I'm not a very vulnerable person. But music always gets me to that place. And so I'm always, whenever I hear music, especially like middle school music, like music from my middle school, like Low.
There's this like nostalgic quality to it too.
Yeah, and so there's like the general feeling, but then there's also like specific feelings where I'm like, I feel like I am 12 in this moment right now.
Gotcha.
And whenever I listen to this music, I always get taken back to like just humbled down. Where were you when you heard this music? And I was like, fuck.
From an emotional standpoint, as opposed to like,
actual
I think
memories.
of this person when I hear this song,
or like I think of like the time that I was driving around, and no, it's just like that general that place, or not general, specific place, but just on an emotional level. Yeah. So I would like to finally get into the actual deep dive.
Yes.
But I feel like we should whenever we get back.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a quick word from our sponsor. All right, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Now, just let me explain. First of all, it's free. Second of all, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and a whole bunch more. And third, now this is really important, you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Hear me when I say no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And welcome back to the Artenders with Mac and Dan. I am Mac, and you know he's Dan. Where we left off last time was constantly tempting into a deep dive. So let's do it.
Yes.
There is, and tell me if you had the same experience. There is a very specific thing that Rex Orange County understands that sets him apart from other people that write a lot of love songs. And he does write a lot of love songs. Earlier in his career, he did especially, but you still have quite a few, like maybe 4 in this album.
Right.
Now, in my experience, what separates him so drastically is he is one of the few artists I can think of that when he writes a love song, it is the most important part of the song is the sadness. That even though he is in love in the song, it is the it is the anxiety and the negative emotions surrounding that love that makes that love so powerful and so interesting. It gives it stakes almost. In a theater sense, and he says like throughout all of his interviews and everything that you can find on him that he is rooted in the theater. He didn't act or anything, but growing up, most of his music taste came from classic rock and musical theater.
Disgusting.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I know, right? Like what an awful combination. But now he's here.
Yeah. God.
And so I know, right? Abysmal. But it makes for really, really, really interesting stuff because so much of the time you hear pop songs or love songs that are like, I love you, I love her, she's fantastic, and that's all it.
Yeah,
all
Neil Diamond.
Right? Sure. right. And so,
Tony Bennett.
Right. All the way across the board, yeah. And so what's so interesting about Rex Orange County is that he's like, okay, I love you and it makes me want to vomit. It makes me want to run in the opposite direction. I love you so much. I was in such a bad place. I wanted to kill myself. Life was had no meaning, and then you saved me. That the negative emotions around it are actually what gives the song some oomph.
As opposed to as opposed to just being a direct sort of love song, but he just takes it a step deeper in terms of like that relationship with that individual and exploring the root of it and where to go from there. That's interesting. That's a very interesting way of putting it.
And I think it also kind of wraps back to one of my favorite things about Rex Orange County, which is he is one of the very, very few artists nowadays, other than rappers, that really, really cherishes the words that he picked.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. He loves
the like he has no vocal acrobatics. He does not do anything that's out of the realm. With his voice and the music, he tries to keep as simple as possible in the moment. I mean, he has some really cool, interesting, complex music, but for the most part, whenever he wants to tell you something, he will say it multiple times
Yeah.
in the most simple way possible because he wants to tell you something. You know what I mean?
What I appreciate about each song, like it definitely felt like each song had its own story.
Yeah.
In terms of like what he was just trying to get at with each individual piece. And I think also the brevity of this album speaks to its greatness. I
Yeah.
would go so far as to say, because it doesn't overstay its welcome, right? Like it definitely felt like this album had a clear sense of direction
Yeah.
throughout the entirety of the piece. But I also like I had that experience too.
Yeah.
And I had the experience of enjoying each song for its own merit. But I also had the experience of, for the most part, with most of these songs, like if you just played the song like in my ears, after listening to the album on repeat for the most part for like the past few days consistently, I still like couldn't really tell you like which song is which, right?
Yeah.
Because even though each song has its own identity in what he's trying to say, what he's doing in each song, for the most part,
Yeah.
feels largely the same.
Yes.
I think hopefully I'll pronounce this right, but Tara, I think Tara Joshi at The Guardian. I think, and it's just this little excerpt on Wikipedia, and I think it just very greatly describes my feelings for the album. That she says it's jaunty and engaging, but she also says that Pony, the album, meanders, seemingly unaware of its purpose. I don't really agree with the seemingly unaware of its purpose.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a clear purpose with each song, but I think I kind of understand what she's saying, where it doesn't feel like there was a clear purpose with the whole album as a whole,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That I couldn't understand why these songs were all together, just aside from them all sounding kind of similar.
Right.
As opposed to like, this is, and not all albums have to be this, but just to use an example, like this is the story that I'm trying to tell, and this is from point A to point B, and I have articulated this experience.
Yeah.
And maybe honestly I have to listen to the album a few more times, but that was the experience that I had, that still I enjoyed each song. And and there was such a clear focus in the lyricism, as well as clever implementation of instruments, that like you'll hear this flute in the background of one of the songs, and I'm like, that's weird, but it works.
Yeah, right.
And it's really, really enjoyable. But at the same time, I was like, but I have no idea what that song is called unless like I hear the hook, and then I'm like, oh, right, it's that song.
Right. And I think that's actually funny enough that you're talking about the instruments and whatnot, because I think that's another power of GarageBand.
Yeah,
It's just
maybe.
GarageBand. He still edits, and so does Billy Eyelash and Phineas and all them, and a lot of bedroom pop artists. They still edit their shit in GarageBand.
That's really funny.
Isn't that crazy to think about?
Yeah.
Like it's something that is free.
I feel like
we
a lot
can
of
do.
artists, do like FL Studio or just like stuff like that. Yeah.
Or they'll go to like professional producers that like go to absolute town on whatever they're doing, but they genuinely just do it in GarageBand. And also another crazy thing to think about is that Rex Orange County, Alex O'Connor, is he's not like super well trained. No. Like he doesn't actually know that much about music, and
it's funny because he's our age too. He's 22.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He's 22, and so but he's very open about like, I don't really know that much about music. He was like, I really got into piano.
Yeah.
At like a teen age. He was like, I've never taken a guitar lesson in my life. He's like, I took singing lessons in school. Yeah. Other than that, that's literally all I know about music. Whenever he goes on shows, whenever he goes on interviews and podcasts and everything, people talk to him and he's like, I'm going to be very frank, I have no idea what you just said. They'll be like, oh yeah, with the minor fourth and blah, blah, blah.
And like the music theory.
He's like, no idea.
Yeah.
Absolutely no idea what you're talking about. Which is funny because they'll be talking about his music and how he uses it. Yeah. And he's like, I just know the way that I want my music.
I was about to say, like, he has such a great ear.
Yeah.
For it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get this out there really fast. That my gold medal for this album would be Face to Face. I love
That
Face
makes
to
me so
Face.
excited that you say that, because I have, and this is something that makes me really excited about the album Pony, is that every single person that I know that's listened to the entire album
Yeah.
has a different favorite song.
Interesting.
And you have kept it alive.
I've kept it alive. Oh, because nobody
No
that
one
you
else,
know.
their favorite song is Face to Face.
I enjoy Face to Face because I think it's both tremendously catchy.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, pop. But also, there's just sometimes in songs, there's one instrument that gets me. There's just one.
Yeah, I get it.
In the case of Face to Face, it's this like guitar in the background. I couldn't tell you what kind of guitar it is. But it is a guitar that's just like playing this riff in the background. And it's just like, it's so much fun. And it just like, I have the song still stuck in my head and I want to just like move around a little bit because it's a great time.
Yeah.
It's a great time.
Yeah.
And I don't want to like harp on this album. I still stand with the claim that like a lot of it sounds the same, but like if we just listen to one song, talked about it, listen to another song, talk about it, and like just go bit by bit by bit, I mean, we could go ad nauseum about the great merits that the individual songs achieve.
Absolutely.
But I think to this, what does hold this album back is just, I'm not entirely sure of the album's identity. I could point out, if I listen to the songs more, I could point out each song's identity. I can't point out this entire album's identity.
Yeah.
Or like what he's trying to say with the album. And maybe, like I said before, maybe I can get to that answer, but that's a big thing.
Yeah.
That I experienced with this album. Do you have a gold medal?
I do actually. Well, like deep down in a personal way, Stressed Out has always like really gotten me.
Right.
That's always been the one that has really stuck out to
I'm
me.
gonna have to stop you right there.
Please.
Because there's you might have heard a boof. If you didn't, I apologize, but all the same, if you heard a boof, there was a dog in the background. Her name is Coda. This is the time of the day where we say hi, Coda.
Hi, Coda.
And now we keep going, as you were saying.
Yeah, so my favorite song is definitely Stressed Out. There are lots of songs that really get to me, but I think that's the one that definitely
resonates
takes the
with you.
cake.
Yeah.
On a deep down level. Whereas I mean I can probably appreciate Pluto Projector, and it's not the same anymore.
Yeah.
The most in terms of its musicality. And 10 out of 10 is, I mean, just an absolute.
What's funny about 10 out of 10 is that like you could listen to the whole album, but you would be able to point out that 10 out of 10 is the most popular song.
Yeah.
There's something about it. It's just like sometimes movies are made to like get Oscars. It felt like that song was made to like it didn't get a Grammy, but like in the sense of to get awards, right?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
It's definitely the song to get popular.
Yeah,
and that's not a bad thing. It's just like a thing with that song
because it's super fun.
Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit about how he doesn't really know much about music theory or whatever.
Right.
But so what's funny is that his very first conversation with that was actually kind of part of the reason that Tyler the Creator like brought him out to LA was because he called him up and he was talking about his album or his EP and everything. And he was like, do you have more? And he was like, yeah, I have so much more. And so he sent him like a bunch of tracks, which ended up being Apricot Princess, right? Like most of the tracks on Apricot
which
Princess,
was his second studio album.
Yeah, which he already had written. And so he sends it all to Tyler the Creator, and Tyler the Creator's like, okay, so I don't know if you realize this, and he was like, I can tell you who your favorite artists are based off of what you're doing with the music because it's such a specific. He was like, no one has used this many minor seventh chords since Yacht Pop. And he was like, so I'm going to tell you right now, Billy Joel, Hall & Oates, Queen. Are those in your top 10?
Oh,
and he was like, every single one of them was in my top 10. And which was really funny to think about. And then another big one is that he was like...
I can hear the Hall & Oates.
Yeah, yeah, right. And so but another one was Tyler the Creator started making fun of him because he was like, you use the same jazz chord progression, which is called a 5-2-1, and you use it in 8 out of the 10 songs that you sent me. And he was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And then he was like, okay, so I'm assuming you don't know what that is. And he was like, I don't know what that is. And then the other creator's like, okay, here's what that is. And then he was like, oh, yeah, I definitely use that in every one of them. And so I think because he was so innocently like,
yeah,
I'm willing to learn and be wrong, and also I just know what I like. I like what I like.
truly a man of the people, having no idea what he's doing and yet doing such a great job at it.
Such a great job.
It's really funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I also have a sizzle serve. We haven't had a sizzle serve in a minute. I don't think we have.
No, not really. Not really.
No, I mean,
We've had hot takes, but not like sizzle serve.
we don't. Yeah, we don't call. I mean, like, there's a reason why we don't call our sizzle serves hot takes, because everybody has hot takes, but we have sizzle serves.
We want that flame sound effect to mean something.
But you spoke on it actually very briefly that Rex, Mr. Orange County, is not the greatest sort of vocal performer, and that's fine, right? I can't say anything to that. I also want to say, like, I mean, I can't sing for nothing. Like, he does such a better job than I do. I sound like a cat that's clawing for its life, right? But I also felt like consistently when I was at the very beginning.
Yeah.
When I was listening to the album, I was like, man, the lyrics are great. You know, I really like the instrumentation. I think the production's really solid. Each song is a jam in its own way. I wish somebody else was singing it.
Fair.
And so, like, the first person that, like, popped in my mind was, like, Andre 3000. And I was just thinking about, like, man, like, if this whole album...
What?
I know, it's, like, weird, but, like, I was thinking about, like, Andre 3000, like, singing this, and he has a little bit of, like, twang in his voice, and just, like, oh,
Andre
man.
3000.
I mean, that was the first person that I thought of, for whatever reason, but I was just thinking, like, Rex Orange County... God bless him. He could make a career, though, just off of writing music and not performing it.
Yeah.
That I think his music is so great, but my sizzle serve is coming from the fact of I would have enjoyed this more, period, if somebody else was singing it.
I kind of get the same vibe from, like, Ben Folds.
Yeah.
Ben Folds much. There's, Ben Folds gives me a very similar vibe, which is, I don't really like your voice. And the only thing that the only thing that keeps me listening to your voice specifically and makes me okay with the fact that it's your voice is that I can tell you're the one that wrote it. There is no other draw but that. And so,
unless there's like an ironic liking to a bad voice, like I think Lil Dicky is a great example. Like,
that's
Lil Dicky's voice is awful, but that's not why you listen to his music. Or that's also partially why, because he sounds awful.
Yeah, right.
And so it sells his music, the sort of funny appeal of it all. But
yeah, and well, I will say though, that made a lot more sense upon seeing him in person. Yeah. Which is funny because he wasn't made to be in person. He was made to be bedroom pop. But
you're referring to Rex Orange County.
Yes.
Sorry, for some reason I was thinking of Lil
Dicky.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, whenever I met Lil Dicky. No. So whenever we saw him in person, there was
Dave. Sorry.
Have you seen the show?
No, I haven't.
I mean, neither. Okay, gotta go.
Wow, what a conversation.
I know. So, as you're watching him, you can't help but think to yourself. I mean, you're used to it at that point. You're like, you're not the best singer in the world.
Yeah.
But whenever you're watching him, you're like, okay, your songs are so lyric heavy.
Yeah.
That and you can make them a lot more clear and theatrical in person because we see it all the time because we're both from theater. There are plenty of musical theater performers that, I mean, just are not fantastic, but can get away with it.
Oh yeah,
because of the way that they treat it, because of the way that they treat the words, because of they act the shit out of it, and they apply voice techniques.
They're
to
basically in sales. Yeah.
Right. And so that's what. You can see Rex Orange County doing that a lot. That he's not necessarily a showman, but he knows how to treat words really, really well, and he knows how to treat his own words because he spent so long putting them together.
I think part of the charm to this too, like recognizing still that I of course, I'm still going to prefer somebody else vocally doing this, but part of the charm is like it does feel like it's just some guy, singing in the shower, and like he doesn't care who hears him. So, but like he just wants to sing.
He does kind of have a shower vibe, I guess.
Yeah. Like it's just like I don't sound the greatest, but like who cares? That's not why I'm here. I'm here because like I want to make music and I believe in that, and that's all that matters. And there's something like inherently wholesome about this artist, that I'm going to want to keep listening to his stuff more and more because and mostly it's just like curiosity, right? You hear only 10 songs from this album and you're like I'm and a lot of it sounds the same to me, but I'm interested like what else can he do? Right?
I think that would also be different if he was older.
Yeah.
I think the fact that he's young and so unbelievably good at articulating the experience of being a young person.
Yeah.
And being in the situations that he's been in is what's keeping him alive.
And telling that through music in an incredibly impressive way, considering his supposed, lack of experience in the grand scheme of music.
Right.
It's ridiculously impressive.
Yes, I absolutely agree. So, overall, would you recommend the entire album, or would you say to skip a couple songs and
this
go to the main ones?
This is how I would describe the album, right? Music in the good olden days when there was just, back in my day when there were just records, or maybe there were cassette tapes, or maybe it was just CDs and you had CD players, right? You had a limited amount of music on you.
Yeah.
Right? You could only have what you could buy.
Yeah.
And what you could physically have. And so naturally you would cherish the music so much more. But the thing is about music nowadays is that you don't have to, like when a new album comes out, you don't have to satiate it in the same way. You don't have to experience it in the same way. You aren't forced to listen to the entire album, or like you have to, man, I really want to listen to that one Lionel Richie song. All right, let me grab my Motown record. Let me put that on. All right, now I got to move the needle, right? It's a whole, endeavor. As opposed to music nowadays, you pull up your phone, pull up whatever streaming app you use, and you could just listen to some of the songs from this album. And so I think all of that to say that the sort of album experience, listening to an album, that experience has died a little bit, and I don't think this album necessarily does anything to alleviate that because of it as a whole. But I would still recommend you to like add this album to your library.
Yeah.
Give a listen to a few songs. Add those few songs. If you like those songs, listen to some more songs, right? I can't recommend the album, but I could recommend the 10 songs that just happen to be on this album for you to add.
Yeah.
That I feel like this album is best experienced. Like you put your phone on shuffle when you're driving and like, boom, this song comes up. Oh, this is pretty good. As opposed to back in the olden days, you have a scotch, you smoke a cigar, and you're just laying back and you're like, stressed out. Never had the balls. Yes.
Where you listen to an entire album all the way through, right?
Right, yeah. You don't... I think this album should not be listened to from track 1 to track 10.
Sure.
This album should be interspliced with other things throughout. And that's not...
it should be
that's nothing against the songs themselves.
No.
That's against, I think, just the construction of the album and what the album does as a whole. I still think it's great, and I want to make that very, very, very clear.
Yeah.
Mac,
but the album wasn't made to be consumed as an album.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree.
But what are your final thoughts?
I think that it's... I will say it's definitely short enough to listen in one sitting.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I would recommend all 10 songs. And just like you were saying, I'd recommend all 10 songs. I think it's really easy to listen to all 10 songs in one sitting. So you might as well just listen to the album. You know? But it is coming from a different place. It is, as you already know, one of the only 3 albums that I've ever listened to that every single song I like.
Yeah. And that's a rare feeling.
Really rare.
You don't realize how rare that is until you're like, wait a second, every song on this album I love. What the hell is going on?
Yeah.
Like, usually there are like 2 songs on an album that like you wouldn't care for, but it's a very unique experience and a very it's one to treasure when you have that experience that you love every single one of these songs.
Right.
And that should be spoken out to the rest of the world.
Yeah, right. Is this Surf, Donnie Trump at the Social Experiment, and Room 25 by No Name. And it's funny because those are all like vaguely hip hop and rap influenced.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go ahead and say, including this, there are definitely times in this where you feel like he's crossing a little over into like spoken word almost, where he just like lets go of the song and he's like, fuck the song, I'm just gonna speak now. Which is cool. Which is a really cool tool. Yeah, I'm obviously I recommend it. Why would I not? I'm the one who made Danny listen to it so that we could talk about it right now. So, yes. Anything else? Oh, I mean, well, what are we consuming next week?
Next week, we're gonna do something different in the sense of these past few recordings, these episodes have been a lot of us viewing our favorite something.
Yeah.
Right? We viewed my favorite album that just happened to be through a movie. We viewed Sam's favorite movie, Shama's favorite movie. We just viewed, or I guess reviewed one of your favorite albums, right? Mm-hmm. I am purposefully picking something that I have seen before, but it is distinctly not one of my favorites, but I think it's going to generate a lot of interesting conversation. It is actually a television show, but it only has 25 episodes.
I'm kind of nervous, okay?
That are half-hour long. And it's... Oh, there she goes.
Oh,
wow,
Coda.
I think she's getting excited.
I'm getting excited, too. I think she's building off the...
So I should get to the point. But it's an anime. That's only 25 episodes, and you're like, oh, right, because you don't... Because a lot of the popular animes that are on nowadays are... And Max just pointed to a Cowboy Bebop poster in my room, but that is not what we're going to be viewing. A lot of popular anime nowadays, when you think of it, is probably like Dragon Ball Z or One Piece or Naruto. Series that are like 700 episodes long, right? That leave a big impact on a lot of kids and a lot of just generations, per se, because they just last for so long, right? But we're actually going to view an anime that released in 1997-98. That has become a sort of cult classic of sorts. And it is, like I said, it's distinctly not one of my favorite things, but it is, at the same time, I remember it being fantastic. It is called Berserk. It is about a man named Guts and a mercenary group called the Band of the Hawk. I don't want to give anything else except for the fact that the first episode is kind of, but not related to the plot of the rest of the series. That the plot of the series really starts with the second episode, but the first episode is, you may be able to piece it together later on, but don't watch the second episode thinking, but what about what happened in the first episode? Don't do that. So we're going to be looking at Berserk next week.
That sounds like some Sam Shepard shit.
It's insane, and I don't want to get into why it's insane.
Cool.
Thank you, Mac.
Thank you, Danny.
And thank you, listeners. And thank you, Goda.